Hey, Alpha fam. Welcome back to another episode of Alpha Commission. Today on Alpha Commission, of course, we're going to go over that sideways action on the Bitcoin chart, as well as a little bit of green returning to the altcoins. You can still see it's a bit of a mixed bag with a red punctuating here and there throughout. Guys, let's just jump straight to the charts. And you can see that today is looking much stronger than yesterday. Yesterday, we had the volatility pivot above us, and I said we're likely to have a pullback. We're likely to just drift sideways or down, and that's exactly what we did. You can see these candles. These are 4-hour candles. They just chopped down or sideways, but as of this morning, we are getting that 4-hour volatility pivot under us, and we did ricochet off of the updated neutral point of control on the 4-hour here, which does suggest that we do have a chance to break back into the alpha momentum pool. And what we really want to be is on top of that momentum pool when we have the volatility pivot at our back, and that gives the bulls the best chance to regain control and for us to push forward. Just generally speaking, you are looking for that $30,500 area, but if you really want to see some bullish action, probably 30,570 is really the level that you're looking for. And again, like we need to get above this momentum pool at 30,475. Currently, we're just 30,325, and we don't really lose the center of the RSI until 30,175, and the bears don't gain control until 29.6. So we do have a pretty safe buffer there. Guys, we do have some interesting closures today. Of course, the weekly is going to close, but let's go ahead and take a look at the daily first. The daily is still looking a little bit top heavy, a little bit toppy there in the sense that its volatility pivot is overhead. And so while the 4-hour could make a noble attempt, there is the risk that it's just going to be a lower high. And then the daily chart here is saying, well, I may have to end up smacking you back down, even if you came all the way up to 30,700 to retest. Unless you get above 30,750, you're not going to recapture the daily volatility pivot. So you may still do a little bit of choppiness sideways or potentially down. Now, the good thing about the daily is currently you can see this real indecision candle here right on the edge of the alpha momentum pool, and so it is deciding whether or not it wants to take a swim lower or whether it's going to hold this momentum to the upside. So that is a critical level, guys, that we need to be thinking about. 30,325 at the close of the day, and just for a little extra oomph, 30,420. So we are seeing the importance of that little zone there. We don't start really losing significant momentum until under 30,000, and then similar to the other one, we don't really start damaging the chart until 29.7 over here. Let's just quickly move through these and jump to the 2-day chart. On the 2-day chart, we can see just a little bit of a different picture here where the volatility pivot is within reach of this candle. It's just, of course, it's floating up there just like on the daily. And so even the 2-day, which does close in 6 hours, suggests that we could do a little bit of a drift sideways or perhaps even push down towards this massive amount of liquidity that's open here on the 2-day. And I have to admit that, since bulls will retain control as low as 28,900 on the 2-day chart. Since the 2-day chart is closing today, there is a risk that 2-day bulls may want to take a dive down through this momentum pool, which you can see lose the bottom, grab maybe like 50% of this liquidity, and then just use that as rocket fuel to continue their path upward. Okay, so even bulls tend to push down sometimes just to liquidate longs and then add it to their own position as they move the market up. It is winner take all type of game, right? Zero sum game is trading. Guys, let's move over to the weekly, because the weekly does suggest a very much more rosy picture than the other ones, which is that on the weekly Oops, sorry about that. We are above the volatility pivot, right? So the volatility pivot is all the way down at 27,000, and we are significantly above it. So if we did come down and retest that zone, that would be perfectly normal. The volatility pivot does get tested every once in a while, and so if the other time frames are saying, we want to just push down for a little while, we could come all the way down here to the hold momentum level around that 28,400, right? And maybe the 2-day could grab some liquidity, and then we just continue to push up bullishly off of the alpha momentum pool on the weekly. Otherwise, if we do end up in this pool, we could drift all the way to 27,300 without losing any control on the bulls. Now, as you can see on the weekly, there is a lot of open liquidity here, but we start breaking stuff when we get this low. So that's under 25,000, the midpoint here. You can see we barely tapped into that. And so what I'm thinking is, we're probably going to go on an epic run and then come back later to this area and maybe just wick and grab some of that liquidity that we left on the table. There is more down here, but we did grab a much more sizable portion than we did over here. And so this is just easy pickings for market makers to later on bring us back. But, that could be something, maybe a collapse in the stock market or some type of a black swan event or something like that later on that could bring us into these areas to collect this liquidity. But just pointing out that it is there, and we do have this one above the neutral point of control. So bulls really wouldn't lose that much just by dipping down even as low as the 23,000. It's just that should be a wick, sort of like this one. It shouldn't be where we hang out there. That would really make me think that this chart may end up turning around. But yeah, there you go. There's your analysis for the weekly. As you can see, again, we hold momentum above 28.3. And just to bring the 2-day back, you can see that on the 2-day, the volatility pivot was 30,500, whereas on the daily, it was 30,700. Now, all of these are closing today. And so it does suggest that the 2-day is more bullish than the daily, and that the weekly is much more bullish than all of them, and that, the 4-hour and the daily may be just struggling, a little bit, but that should probably end up being a temporary thing, which could get resolved just by going sideways or dipping down briefly, just kind of refueling the gas tank. If we do just to go ahead and just take a look at our EMAs on the daily, you can see that we are, let me just get a complex set of EMAs. We are just sitting on top of that 4 EMA, right? My signature EMA there. And so that is incredibly bullish. I can't really knock that. And so until we lose that, I'm not going to say that we're going to drop at all. We could just go sideways and then randomly pop up, guys, okay? If we do break this 4 EMA under 30,250-ish, then, the next EMA is around 29.8, and then there's a little supportive zone here, and then the next one is somewhere around 29,000, 28,800, okay? Which would be in line with grabbing some of that liquidity on the daily and the 2-day, okay? So there's your EMA perspective on that. Just briefly, let's go ahead and take a look at the volatility, so we can get an idea of what's happening here on volatility. On volatility, we may have a little bit of a chance. You can see that most of these lines here have kind of pushed to the top, and we are getting a little bit of toppiness here. We could end up having a little bit of a turnaround, but we are in this bullish area, so no guarantee we're just going to flop over and die, but maybe we could get a little bit of a pullback, retest this bottom area a little bit before pushing back up. That's the daily. Let's look at the 4-hour. The 4-hour is driving sideways right now. We do have a curvature up, so the 4-hour may want to just pop up and again, like make a little bit of a lower high. Let's look at the 2-day. The 2-day is pointed up, so yeah, again, like the 2-day and the weekly are very bullish. Yeah, here's the weekly, and there's like no stopping it, okay? So these things still want to continue to push up, but basically everything is looking pretty good on the higher time frames. It's just the shorter time frames might be causing some trouble. And those were my oscillators, pardon me. If we take a look at the volatility, you can see that volatility for the weekly, it still has a little bit more push. This thing isn't ready to close yet, so its move up probably isn't done. Let's get the 2-day. The 2-day is done, but it looks like it could just go sideways. That would allow the 4-hour and the daily to just, you know, take a little trip to the downside. Okay, let's look at the daily. The daily still wants to push a little bit, but it is curving down just a bit. So this thing could be ready for a pullback, and it may just be waiting for permission from the 4-hour and the 4-hour. Yeah, the 4-hour is expanding. Well, it's contracting to the downside here. So that does suggest that it may still have half of the move left to go to push to the downside there. And let's just go ahead and take a look at how that is lining up with price action, which is really just sideways. So maybe the 4-hour just wants to go sideways, and then the daily maybe could push either up or down. Volatility is direction neutral. But yeah, the higher time frames are just waiting for the 4-hour and the daily to sort this out. So far, I can't knock this stuff, guys. Even on the 4-hour here, how is this a bearish look on the EMAs? It's, we're pretty much above the 4. We haven't lost it yet. We just tagged the 20. And that's perfectly normal. Okay, we really don't want to lose this 30,200. Then we're going to potentially come down to 30,000, maybe even 29,800, based upon the 4-hour EMA perspective. But right now, again, I just have to be neutral for sideways. And 4-hour and daily biased sideways and down. The 2-day and the weekly, which also closed today, their charts closed today, are suggesting continuation to the upside as soon as the 4-hour and the daily finish whatever they're doing. Guys, that was your alpha for the day. Stay safe and happy trading.